I wonder if you've attempted to sew a style that has a half placket in the center front. It's super pretty. It's not as hard as you think. I'm going to be showing you step by step how to do that very easily. 2 tops to share, one in chiffon, one in silky satin. Keep watching.
Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon.
Hi, my name's Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. Today I have 2 amazing tops to share with you. I have been a pattern tester recently for Itch to Stitch, and the new pattern is called Chemainus top. Itch to Stitch patterns are named after locations, and Chemainus is a city in Canada. So I always do my research, try to find out where this pattern name is located. Vancouver Island. So if you're Canadian, you probably know where this is, and I hope I've pronounced it properly. Chemainus. The Chemainus top has a relaxed fit. It has dolman type sleeves. It has shoulder insets. It has a half button placket down the front. The neckline is finished with bias binding. There are some pleats in the center front and center back, and the hem has a shirt tail shape. Curved, shorter on the side, a bit longer towards the center. Button placket has 5 buttons down the center. Because it's just been released, will be 20% off for the first week. I will leave all the details in the description box. Use my affiliate link if you want to, because I make a little commission from there, and that helps support me. I did mention that this is a pattern for woven, so that's a tick for me. I love sewing with woven fabrics. About the fabrics, in my opinion, I think that fabrics that are flowy and drapey are going to suit this style better. They need to be lightweight woven, so I have my first pick that you can see there. Those are the types of fabrics I would be happy to use, and I have used chiffon for one and a silky satin for the other. And then there are other types of fabrics that could work as well. They are lightweight wovens, but they're just not going to drape. They are a bit stiffer, and I think because of the features of the pleats in this top, I wouldn't want the pleats to be sticking out. But it might be something that you like, and you might want to use cotton lawn, that sort of thing, shirting, lightweight chambray. They are lovely fabrics, but I just wouldn't pair them to this style. Because this pattern has features like the shoulder inset, the button placket, and the binding, those aspects of the top can be made with contrast fabric, and in that case you can use a little stiffer fabrics for those details, and I have done that myself. I haven't used my chiffon to do the placket or the silky satin. I have chosen plain black quilted cotton, nice quality, nice and easy to sew with, and they're going to make a nice contrast to the other prints and also make the feature of the half placket easier to sew. Actually, only 2 pattern pieces I needed to cut out with the main fabric. The front that is cut on the fold, and the back that is cut on the fold. Sizing is available in sizes 00 to 20 US. There are individual cup sizes from A to DD, so that is amazing. This is a top that does have a dart there, so that is really good. And the highest measurements here are a 49.5 inch bust and a 48.5 inch hip. But I'm gonna say there is plenty of ease in this style. You know, you're looking at about 10 inches of ease. So if your body measurements are slightly larger than the ones listed for size 20, I think you would still fit into this pattern. My body measurements put me in a 12 to 14 hip, but I just made a straight 12 because I knew my hips were gonna fit into there, and the difference wasn't that much. I usually need to do length adjustments with most patterns. I am usually taller than what the patterns are drafted for. Because this pattern has detailed finished measurements, including the length, I knew that the 27 inch length from the nape of the neck to the back was good for me. I don't want it longer than that, so I didn't adjust for length. And the only fitting adjustment I made, which is very standard for me, was to lower the buster by 3/4 of an inch. I have a video showing how to do that. If you haven't seen it and you're new to the channel, I pretty much have a video about everything. Not everything, but a lot of things. So I will link all these videos that could help you down in the description box as well. What I'm going to show you in Up Close and So Personal is how to construct the front, because it's the front that's got the most interesting features. I'm going to show you how to put together that front pleat, how to sew on the binding on the neckline, and step by step how to sew this half button placket, which is super well made, super well designed, thought out. And it's easier than what you think, very much easier than what you think, with amazing results. On the inside of the top, there's no raw areas, everything's really nicely protected, and you know, you're gonna have a garment with a feature that will last. Let's hop into the practical sewing that you like to see.
This is starting to wear on me. You've been raining down like hail. I'm weak.
This is just a little short piece of the binding piece. It's way longer, of course. I just wanted to show you what is done with it. And basically it's just folded in half and pressed to form a crease. And you have a crease in the middle, and then you fold it again towards that middle crease. There, and then the other side the same. Okay, so this was cut on the bias, obviously you can see because the lines are diagonal there. But that is how it looks. When it's finished on the neckline, it'll have a width of 3/8 of an inch, and these creases there are 3/8 of an inch, you know. So basically the seam allowance you're going to use to sew this onto the neckline is at that first crease there, and that will be 3/8 of an inch there. So that's how you would make the whole binding piece. It's just a short little one because I'm just going to do the front partially to show you how it's done, and this needs to be done before the placket. This is the top of the neckline, this is the front one, and before I do anything I'm just going to stay stitch there within the seam allowance, so smaller than 1/2 inch. And after doing that I'm going to go ahead and do the pleat that comes down further. This is the center front piece, only the bottom bit is cut on the fold there, and then you have that shape, and there's a little mark there, and this is where you have to sew down for 2 inches, and I have marked there up to where I'm going to sew, just with a straight stitch and just with a basting stitch. So I've sewn that down for 2 inches, just long stitch length 4.5, and now we need to open this. So we're looking at the wrong side obviously, and now we just need to open this pleat like that and center it over where it was basted. So I've opened the pleat and centered it there where I basted, and now I'm just going to do a basting stitch across there and then along the edge there for 2 inches, or with basting stitches that are going to be easy to remove at a later stage. That's how it looks on the wrong side. Basted there, long stitch length, and now we have all this shape going up. This is one of the fronts there. I'm just doing this partially so you can see I've pinned the binding right sides together to the neckline, and I'm going to sew along that crease there that is at 3/8 of an inch along there, and the edge of the binding has to match the edge of the neckline. Now that has been sewn, the binding seam allowance needs to be trimmed in half, not the neckline one. So I'm just trimming this first layer there of the binding. And now I still am going to do a few snips there because this is curved. And now I've got to bring this binding to the other side. It's going to be visible, so that's why that seam allowance is intact, and this will wrap around that seam allowance there and go to the back. So I'm going to flip it so you can see the back now. This is the wrong side, and that other crease there has to cover that seam, has to cover it by a tiny little bit, because then stitching the ditch from the right side has to be able to catch this. This is the wrong side of the neckline, and I'm going to stitch in the ditch from the right side. So I'm just going to quickly baste this down by hand. This is how it looks inside. Then on the right side, this is where stitch in the ditch needs to happen, right there, all along the edge. I like stitching in the ditch super slow. I basically almost hand cranked all the way around so that the stitching line wouldn't go onto the binding. I've done it in blue so you can see it's pretty much invisible there. And because the one on the back was slightly longer covering that seam, it's being caught on the other side super neatly. This is the front placket piece, and it's meant to be cut with the fabric right side up. It says with fabric and pattern piece right sides up, cut 1, and of interfacing too. This is just a sample, so I'm not going to interface this piece, but for my real ones I would interface this piece like as big as I need to. I would interface it first and then cut my placket piece, block fusing, and I would avoid having to cut interfacing separately and then trying to fuse it together and running the risk of getting deformed. There are actually lots of marks to be made onto the fabric, lots of lines, you know, all the way up and down, there, that there, all those lines need to be marked onto the placket. And I'm just going to be doing it with a regular ink pen that will survive when I iron these. But for my real ones, I will have to look for another method. This is how the placket looks on the wrong side. Remember, we cut the piece with the fabric up, and I have full of marks, full of lines. But this is how we're going to start working on it to make the first couple of creases. So the one that has the long bit there, that's what you start folding first. And there was a line there, 1/2 inch, that needs to be pressed. And I'm going to do the same with this other side. Just press this one that's on the outside 1/2 inch. Then there was a second line here. As you can see, it's further away. The buttonhole marks are there on this long bit there. So that one needs to be pressed too. And now this side as well, there was another line there. Once these folds have been pressed, you can see it looks like that. Then we're just going to flip this over, and we have a little tiny fold here at 1/2 inch as well. There's a line there. Now I have these lines here like that I haven't cut out yet, but I'll cut them out now. I just felt it was going to be easier if I cut them out after doing these folds. Okay, so that's how it looks. Here we have the front piece, the wrong side. You're looking up there, the binding has already been done. And we have our placket piece that is going to be pinned onto there, the right side of the placket to the wrong side of the top. And now here on the top, you need this to protrude there by 1/2 inch, which is the seam allowance that the pattern is using. And you can see the shape of the front there has that opening, and it has to match the one of the placket there, and it's matching really well. These things that had been folded already, I'm just going to open them. Now matching all these raw edges here, this now needs to be sewn like a rectangle there with 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can see the bottom there, and I finished sewing at 1/2 inch seam allowance, and now this needs to be snipped into the corner there. So right up to the corner, right there, and now we need to flip this over to the right side. This has been sewn, you can see the rectangle there, those corners have been snipped, and now this needs to be flipped to the right side. The whole placket has been turned over to this side, so this is the right side of the top, because you can see the vertical stripes. Wrong side is just like that. So what you're seeing here is the right side of the top and the right side of the placket. And now, before anything else, I did press this, of course. All these seams have been pressed nicely, this little rectangle. Along the bottom of this sewn edge, we need to get a ruler and place it 1/8 of an inch below that sewn edge. So just a little bit further down, and it needs to be a ruler with some length so that it reaches this other side. And we're just gonna do a line there to be with an erasable pen, like a friction pen. So the line goes across here, but it's slightly lower than that edge, just 1/8 of an inch there. Okay, after marking the line there, where this is longer on that side, we're going to take this side that is shorter. There is a line going all the way down there that has already been previously marked, and we're going to fold these right sides together, folding it onto itself matching the edge right there, and at the top we have that bit that's protruding there. This needs to be sewn on the top there, and the same thing with this side. So this will be folded onto each other. There is already a vertical line there, so you just match them here, and the top of this one, it will also be closed. So 2 little seams there and there. You can push that neckline away so you don't touch it, so it's just like that. And we're going to do the same on the other side. We have these 2 top edges sewn, and now this just needs to be flipped. And see how this closes the top part of this placket and includes the neckline that's raw, it's tucked in there, same as this side. Okay, so both sides are finished on the top. Now we just need to tidy this up. We'll put this one aside for now, and now this seam allowance needs to be tucked in under there. I'm going to do quick hand basting to hold it down, and then this needs to be edge stitched right there all the way to the bottom. This area is raw, but that's fine because it will be covered at a later stage when we do this other side. Okay, so I have just done some quick hand basting there to hold that in place there, and along there this is raw still. And now I'm going to do the same with this side. This side has also got that line to mark where it's supposed to be folded, and you can see how it's going to overlap here and cover that raw area here. Remember here at the bottom, this little bit had already been pressed up. You can see the line there, 1/2 inch from the bottom, and this is going to cover that inside. This is why that line was drawn there. Remember we drew a line? That line, when we sew on it, it's going to catch all this under there. I'm going to align this nicely and hand baste this there. That seam allowance is also tucked in there and covered by this, so it makes a lot of sense now, doesn't it? And it's super neat. Okay, so we have the short end that has been hand basted, and up to there, that's just to hold it there. And then this other long bit has been folded up, and that has also been hand basted, but just up to there, not including this. I still want this flapping around free, so I'm going to go ahead and edge stitch there and then baste there. And on this side, I'm just going to edge stitch up to there and leave this open. I've got the edge foot there that's going to help sew really neatly. After edge stitching there, I've just put a normal presser foot so I can baste this there. I don't want to sew that on the edge, it'll just unravel. This little stitch doesn't need to be perfect, it won't be seen, it'll be covered by this. I put the edge foot back, and now I'm going to start from this bottom, the one that covers, and just from there. I'm not going to sew that closed yet. Make sure that you're not sewing this, like make sure it's out of the way when you're edge stitching here. At this stage, it's looking super neat. All that has been edge stitched and then basted there. This long one is covering there, everything matches on the top. This one has been folded there, but it's still open. And this is the step where I'm gonna do buttonholes. So there are marks there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttonholes there. And this buttonhole is super close to this area that will be sewn later on to close that finally and have that fixed. There will be better access to doing these buttonholes, not the ones up here, those are fine, but the one closest to this edge is easiest done now when this is open, so I can just put it like that in my sewing machine and do the buttonholes. I'll do one just to please you. I won't be doing them all because this is not a real garment. See how by having this open still, I have full access to the placket here where the buttonholes are meant to be made. Buttonhole, see how close it is to that stitching line that will be done to close this off. And what needs to happen now is just at that line there that we'd marked before, start edge stitching there, pivot and edge stitch up to there. Remember I'd already done up to there, so it's just that little shape that needs to be sewn. then that line there, and then across there, and that will fix that there. Okay, now that that has been sewn there, I'm just going to sew there and then just go there and then do a separate one there. This is just boring straight stitches that are just going to hold this in place. I am not back tacking here, it's gonna look ugly if I do that, so I'm just leaving these long threads like that so I can finish them off on the back. So it's done. It was super fun to sew. It's super neat. I've got it pinned at the top. You can see how everything matches there on the top, and it's perfectly centered in the neckline. Buttonhole is centered there where it's going to be. I made one there. If you recall, in the first steps doing this pleat before doing the placket, there were some basting stitches done to form this there. These can just be removed, and they were done with a long stitch length, and you know, you should just be able to pull them out easily. Okay, so the basting stitches were removed there, and that pleat is nice and tucked in there. You can see that the placket is completely centered over the top of that center front pleat, and super neat. I did mention in the tutorial that I didn't interface that placket, that big piece. It does need to be interfaced. I'm not going to go to those lengths to make a fake garment, but please interface your placket, and I would suggest block fusing that. Don't cut them separately. By block fusing, I mean that you take a piece of fabric that is big enough to fit the placket, you interface it first, then you put your pattern piece and cut it out. In this case, you need to cut out the placket with the fabric right sides up. You get your pattern piece and you put it on top of the fabric right sides up, which is different to other pattern pieces, but it is clearly stated there on the pattern piece and the instructions. Last week I showed you a fabric haul, and I showed you one fabric that I was very excited about. I did mention it was for a pattern test, and it's a silky satin, not that shiny, and it is a very dizzy type fabric. Now I was told that it seems like, if you look at it really hard, that it's supposed to look like something else. Have you seen those graphics around? Well, I don't think it looks like anything else other than just being a little bit dizzying. I have to admit, when I was cutting it and sewing it, I was feeling a bit weird, and I'm actually feeling a bit weird now. It does make me a little bit dizzy, but it's beautiful. I just absolutely love it. It's so floaty and so light. And as I mentioned, I only used this main fabric for the front that was cut on the fold and for the back. For the other features, they are done in cotton, and it just makes the construction so much easier. And I think it's a good tip if you're going to choose a fabric that requires more work. If you can mix some features in with a cotton, you'll be saving yourself a lot of trouble. Although, you know how I sew, I do hand-based, I do a lot of things to ensure that everything is precise. So it's not that I take that many shortcuts, but I think it was easier. And also, having these design features made in the same print fabric, you won't see them. Going through all the steps of sewing this beautiful feature in the same fabric, you won't see it. Of course, it's different if you sew the whole thing in a solid color, then you will be able to see all the features. But it's very hard for me to sew entirely in a solid. So you can see the half placket there. It's very nice, reinforced there with that cross stitching. I used metal buttons. I really like them. The binding there is very neat with the stitch in the ditch. You can't really see it. Took a little bit of time to do, but I'm very happy with the results. And the cuffs here are sewn very neatly. They're very neat inside as well. Little pleat coming from the center front there, and there is a pleat here in the center back right there. This pleat is sewn partially and then it's open. Shirt tail hem, it is slightly curved, shorter on the side there. And you know, you can see how the wind makes it flow. It feels amazing on. Type of fabric that really feels cool to the skin. Special for this weather, although I am in winter, I absolutely love this. Here's my top from far away. This is the length that I like for these tops. I didn't adjust for the length, So I think if you're shorter than me, it would be a little bit longer. I should have adjusted 1 inch, but I like this length and love the curved hem. Looks all curved on the side. And these are just some ready to wear basic ponte pants. Up closer you can see where the placket finishes. It finishes around my waist, around where my waist is, but I am short-waisted. It's quite a long placket, and under it there's a little pleat right there, super nice. It is a relaxed fit top, and because it has quite a lot of ease, I think the fabric needs to be nice and flowy in my opinion. I wouldn't want to make this with like a stiffer type fabric that would, you know, hold the volume up and the pleats up, you know. Here's the neckline, super nice with the bias binding. I did it in contrast black, same as the placket, same as the shoulder inset. I think if a design has these features, doing it entirely in a print is just gonna hide them, and you know, all that work of doing these techniques nicely are just gonna be lost in the print. That's why I wanted the print, of course, and then I thought the black was gonna make them stand out, and that's why I've got the placket, cuffs, shoulder inset, and all the neck binding there. There is a little pleat there at the back. I'm not sure if you can see it, but that pleat also assists in giving the top more volume at the bottom, just a bit more flowiness. That's why I like fabrics like this for this style. Here is the center of the placket there. The buttons are really nice and centered, and the top of that meets the binding there. It's super clean there, finished. Same as this inset is super nice. I love it with the contrast. It's only cotton I've used. And there you can see the cuffs. The sleeve of this dolman style is longish. You can see it's not a short style at all. You won't be able to see anything through there when you move your arms around. The bust dart is right there, if you can see the distortion in my print, and it's hitting at my bust height when I've lowered it 3/4 of an inch. And a dolman style with a dart for cup sizes is always going to be so much better, and you're going to have less bulk here. So I really like that. I think it's a clean look, you know, without that much bulk on the side, and I really like it. Maybe you can see where I've done all that top stitching, that little square bit there with the cross. Super fun to do. The buttonhole is quite close to there, the last buttonhole. I loved sewing it. I like this pattern because it has super fun details, really nice fit with the darts, cup sizes. This placket is really nice. You can show off pretty prints and then mix in some solids to make these details shine. I really like it. Looks just like something I would buy from a really nice shop, only that I made it myself. If you saw yesterday's video about the 20+ tips about sewing with slippery silky type fabrics like chiffon, you would have seen parts of this next one I'm going to show you being cut out, because that is what I was filming. So you probably seen the fabric already, and here's the top. I could not resist making it. You can maybe see my face through it because it is completely sheer. Just having the cotton features there made it a little bit easier to sew. Of course, sewing this button placket with cotton was much easier than if I'd done the whole thing with chiffon. That would have been a little bit more time intensive. And as I said, why would I want to do all this in the same chiffon when no one's going to see it? You know, though if I chose a navy chiffon, for example, I would have done the whole thing, you know, just a few more steps. Block fusing, of course, these button plackets. I actually cut all these contrast pieces at the same time because I always knew I was going to make 2 of them. What I wasn't decided on was this one. I had another fabric there, but then I decided on the purple because it matches my recently made Danube skirt, my jean skirt that I made just a few days ago. So I'm trying to build that purple, and this was perfect. You can see the print has these little swirls and a little bit of shiny there. It's a crinkle chiffon. The top was sewn almost in the same way that the other one was, with the exception that I sewed on the binding here in the reverse way, so not traditionally like I did with the other top. You know how I like sewing things in reverse? I sew the binding inside, right side of the binding to the inside of the garment, and then flip it out. And then I edge stitched right there. So no stitch in the ditch. I think this is acceptable too and looks super neat. And I actually think it's easier than what was instructed in the pattern, which was stitching in the ditch. So this is a pattern test. Everything is done as per the pattern. Here I did a little change, but it doesn't really affect anything. The cuffs here on this one were also sewn in reverse. I have a video where I've shown how I sew things like this in reverse, waistbands, cuffs, whatever. You just do it the other way around, and then you end up top stitching on the outside of the garment where it's visible, and so it can be super neat. And you don't have to worry about not catching anything inside because it's already been sewn. So same technique, it's just applied in different areas. And of course, you know, this was hand basted, this was hand basted, oh, that was hand basted. As even in the demo where I was working with really easy cotton, I was still hand basting because it's ingrained into the way I sew, and it's always worth it. The garment's always going to look so much neater, so much better to sew without the pins in those areas, and it's never a waste of your time. I hope I can convince at least one of you, and that would make me super happy. I wanted to take the pictures for this one, and it was pouring with rain. I still went out there, put the camera under a roof, but I myself was getting a little bit wet while I was taking the pictures.
I don't usually go out this late at night to the place where the animals go. But baby, I'm here and I'm watching you move. There's just one thing you should know. Dance with me.
If you like this design, you want to have a go at sewing a half placket, maybe you've never sewn one before, this one would be a really good one to start with. Pattern instructions are amazing, and you also have the visual resource here in the tutorial. So, you know, you would be pretty well set out to have a really nice result if you want to give this a go. You're welcome to use my affiliate link if you want to. I make a small commission from there, and it doesn't cost you extra. The pattern is 20% off during the release week. For the ladies that support me on Patreon that have access to exclusive content, there is an extra video on Patreon about this specific chiffon version for you to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give half plackets a go. Have you done them before? I really enjoyed this, and I think I can take this pattern piece and apply it to other tops and just put half buttered plackets everywhere. It's super fun to do. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching.